Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me. Happy Tuesday and welcome. Thank you for being here. Today is Tuesday, the 20th of October, and we are still in the month of October, obviously. And this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And how appropriate would it be for us to have a survivor come and join us tonight and share her story, not just of surviving domestic violence, but how she took what was used to hurt her, what she took, what was used to stop her and to hinder her progress and going forth in life, and not being able to see herself fully, like how our minds are altered in these situations. But she didn't only just overcome, she is thriving, and I decided that she would be a perfect guest for us so that we can learn from her and hear how she overcame, so that we can all collectively draw from her strength and move forward. So I want to take a moment to just welcome everybody here tonight. Thank you so much, Tanya, for being here and helping me out in these comments. Adrina, welcome. Guys, everybody, Adrina is in Ghana, but she is still showing up to join our community and to help us, take care of the community while encouraging everybody. So thank you so much for your commitment and your dedication, Adrina. Danny, Karen, everybody who is here, Felicia, welcome. I thank you so much for being part of the conversation tonight. I don't want to take away from our guest tonight. I have to thank you, Deliqua, for being part of this discussion and for having the courage to speak up and share your story, not just to share your story for the sake of using words, but for uplifting and inspiring and being somebody that many can glean from while they navigate their way through their own situation, and use you as a focal point, use your success, use your courage as something that they can pull on so that they can experience the level of joy, peace, happiness, and success that they really deserve. So thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you. I mean, it's an opportunity, help inspire and encourage to help rebuild and heal other people. And I don't take it lightly because I understand the dynamics of domestic violence and what it can do to an individual if you allow your spirit to be broken.
And I'm glad that you said allow your spirit to be broken, because that really is, in my opinion, the end result here is to break your spirit. The abuser wants to, almost like the abuser has an issue within themselves and they want to project that onto you so that you can be just as broken as they are. And in exchange, they take away power and control and get a sense of worthiness from being somebody who steps on somebody.
Correct. Actually, that's like my whole experience with it all. The person had major issues within himself, low self esteem, life just wasn't going great, and everything was my fault, so to speak. Every mistake he made before me and every mistake he made with me, everything was my fault because he didn't realize who he was and who God created him to be. So he took on many images of other people, um,
Mm, yeah.
cases, and situations, just because he really didn't understand the gifts and the treasure that was within him, as a black man, so to speak. So,
And I'm glad that you mentioned the black man part. I know that there are some black men who are subjected to this abuse, because it may be physical, it may be emotional, it may be financial, it can be sexual, it can be psychological, but it affects all of us, wherever we are. Race really doesn't matter. But within our community, there's a tendency to want to sweep such issues under the rug. Like, listen, don't you know what your grandma had to deal with? So why are you talking? Why do you think you're any different? Just be quiet. Don't you want to stay married forever? Aren't you trying to have a husband? Like, just take this quietly.
I hate that mentality that they've tried to handle to women, just like you say, shut up and be quiet, look pretty, don't say nothing. And you're teaching a young child, a young lady, that she doesn't have a voice. When you're doing that, you're teaching her that her voice does not matter if she always have to suck it up and be quiet. And so a lot of times women go through a lot of things in private because don't feel like their voice is valuable enough to share with someone else what is going on, because when they did try to speak up, someone told them, hey, 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 you want to keep your man, don't you? You want to keep your husband happy, don't you? And I think that mentality this day and age has to be done and over with, because our voices as women are so powerful, and we have to use them and understand our position as women, to be able to use our voice in a light to where we're building people up and we're bringing them out and not tearing them down, and not saying your voice doesn't matter, be quiet, sit quiet and look cute.
No, that's not the way to go. You're so right. And I think it's important that we begin to use our voices because we can't play pity patty with this because it really does crush a person's soul. And, our soul is such an important part of who we are. That's our mind, our will, our emotions. And when all three of those things are affected, it affects so many areas of our life, like our, not just our personal growth and development, but our spiritual life. And we no longer begin to pursue the very thing that we were created for or created to be. And so, that's a life that would really be unfulfilled. But it's so important that survivors get the healing that they need so that they in turn can stand up and use their voice from a powerful place, not a position really of woe is me and but now take that pain and use the purpose that has been given to you in your story and begin to help other people come out of these situations because abusers they need to be held accountable for what they do.
I absolutely agree. I think that once we go through our healing process, we can find pain, our purpose through the pain. I know I did. I found that my pain had great purpose, and that was to help get my story out there, tell other women, but not only just tell them, but help them through their process. Help them break those chains and those cords of bondage, because when you're abused, that can turn into so many bad behaviors. It can turn into bad financial behavior, spending money uncontrollably because you're trying to numb the pain, whether it be in food, whether it be going to buy a designer bag, whatever the case may be. And it can also turn into bad sexual habits. You may become very loose because, you're being abused in different situations, whether it's domestic, whether it's rape, whether it's molestation, whatever the case may be. You can lose your whole complete sense of identity going through things like this if we allow ourselves again. I have to go back to that word allow, because I think a lot of times we put in our place ourselves in a place of allowing things to happen because we feel like we have no way, nowhere to go, nowhere to turn. So we stay in that place of accepting and allowing this behavior because we don't even know our own strength and how we can come out of the situation.
One of the tragedies about it, though, is that in some families, in some people's lives, this is all they've seen. And so grandmama was beaten up, mom was beaten up. And so now it's okay for it to happen to you while your children watch this. And so I think, when such dysfunction is normalized, hey, this is just what happens. This is how we do it over here. And so it's that, that perspective, that toxic perspective really is what will hinder some people and cause them to think that this is what is normal. This is what should, this is how relationships look because they don't know anything different. And so if it's the sexual abuse that has been, running through their bloodline with alcohol, drugs, whatever, it's normal over here. That's just how we do it. And you hear people say things like that, like, well, that's just how it is, and so just take it, and that's such a common thing for people to tell victims, survivors, thrivers that it's no big deal.
I agree. I agree. It's I know in my particular story, abuse did was handed down. It's that generational curse, that cycle, that curse that you go through your life. And I was adamant about with my daughter because I have a 25-year-old daughter. So I was adamant in breaking that curse and allowing her know you do not have to tolerate these behaviors, and I was very open in communication with her. So, and to allow her to know that no matter what's going on, you can come to me and you can talk about it. You know, we're not going to sweep anything under the rug. We're going to deal, not cope. We're going to deal with
Ooh,
whatever the issue may be. And so I found a lot of times in my own journey that I was coping with things. I wasn't dealing with them. I didn't start dealing until, we could talk about this later, when I had my breaking point. That's when I started dealing and I understood that there was a difference. But with my daughter, I made sure, you know, I always uplifted her. I always told her how smart, pretty, beautiful she is. And I sat her down and had real conversations with her. You know, and people would say to me, you know, well, I don't think you should be telling. No, because see, this is a cycle and I want it to be broken. I don't care how much
um,
I prayed and spoke in tongue. I know that her mindset had to be different from what my mindset was, because that's how the curse continues to happen, because it's not a change of mindset or behavior. It just gets passed it down. But I didn't want to pass down that behavior to her as a female. So I made sure that I literally would talk to her about any and everything that I possibly could to prepare her, to get her to understand. And from my knowledge, she has never had to deal with any type of abuse.
what a blessing that is. And it speaks a testament, it speaks volumes, really, not just to your testimony, but your commitment and your dedication to your daughter, because it is a lot of work to break these cycles and to change. And what you did effectively is not just change your daughter's life, but like your grandchildren,
Mm-hmm.
their children and their children's children. So the whole bloodline has now shifted and the trajectory is different. How much more different would not just our lives but other people's lives be if we were able to not have experienced these things but have had a really healthy perspective the entire time, throughout our whole life, that we were able to see ourselves as who we truly were formed and fashioned to be, without any staining from these abusive people, these toxic relationships and situations that we sometimes find ourselves in. So that does say a lot. But I want to go back to what you said a little while ago. You mentioned that there's a difference between dealing and coping. And sometimes you really don't know the difference, or you just don't know because, hey, if somebody's been doing this their whole life, let's say she's 50 and it's just been 50 years just like this, she's been on autopilot and this is just how this is how I live my life. How can how can you differentiate between coping and dealing with something?
Well, I think coping behavior is I'll be okay. I'll be okay, and never addressing the issue. Always talking about things, but never implementing action behind your words.
Yeah.
Um, we all know great things, right? And we all can give people great advice, but a lot of times we don't necessarily apply what we know to our own personal situations. So that's what I feel the difference is between coping and dealing. Dealing is action, and it's action behind your words. Coping is just words. I'll be okay. And you never confront, you never deal with anything. It's, you act like it never happened. Like you say, you're on autopilot. It's yeah, that happened yesterday. Well, what did you do about it? Girl, I'm okay. But it's still chipping and eating away at you day after day after day, because you haven't changed your behavior patterns. You haven't changed your mindset. You haven't changed the way you're going about and moving about your day and doing things differently. Everything is the exact same, but words, I this is one of my pet peeves. We trendy with affirmations, but if you don't put the work, if you don't put
Come on.
a system behind what you're saying, you're just saying words. But it all has to align and it all has to meet and catch up with each other. And that goes by energy, it goes by movement. And energy is movement, it's action. So if you're just saying and not doing anything, you're stuck in a coping situation. So for me, it's about action. It's about the mindset change and behavior patterns changing. And that's when I feel you make the switch to dealing with the issues versus just coping with them. You go get you a nice bowl of vanilla ice cream and some apple pie and you good, but you're really not.
Yep. And when somebody is in that mode to just cope with something, you find that's when those bad habits, pop up as a way to deal with, or just to, in fact, to silence that pain that you feel. That's when you have the emotional eating, you have the promiscuous behavior, you have just the drugs, alcohol, reckless with money, with words. There's so many ways that you can actually see that it's your internal hate, that, I mean, not hate, but your hurt, your pain, that is showing up through your behaviors. And that's when we know that there's a cry for attention. So sometimes, we see little girls out there doing certain things, and everybody is so quick to get on her case and call her a fast this and that, but we don't really know what's the backstory. These young boys, these young men, our young kings are out here trying to be gangbangers and getting money fast. What is going on the inside of you, sir? How are you feeling? And I think, this is how that pain sometimes shows up, through rebellious behavior, through, that tongue that can pierce through anything. I have to go back to what you said about, girl, you've been saying a whole lot. So my mind is, I'm taking notes here. But I have to go back to the part where you mentioned the affirmations. Now, I am big on affirmations. And there was a time when I didn't have the strength to, or even the know-how, how to make it, bring it into action, put my faith into action. But even in those like weak moments, I would still say it and then be like, But then earlier on, you mentioned that, like, listen, you could pray in tongues and it's not going to fix that. And I think that's one of the handicaps that we have, that says that, I'm just going to speak these words. The universe is going to receive it because God wants to bless me. And I am blessed according to the word. And so it's going to happen. Yeah, it will happen once you start taking the steps
Correct.
to making it happen.
You have to take the steps. I'm big on affirmations myself, but I like to put action behind my affirmations. If I know that my life is not aligning to that, then I'm not gonna speak that, because that's not where I'm at. That's not the direction I'm trying to go. I do believe that words can shape your reality, but
Mm.
it shapes your reality when you are putting forth your faith. You're first believing what you're saying. You're trusting in what you're saying. And you have total confidence in what you're saying. And behind that confidence, you're acting and you're moving upon what you're saying. If you're sitting here saying, I'm going to be a millionaire by the end of the year, but what are you doing to become that millionaire by the end of the year? God will open up, but are we moving in a direction of which he wants to open up? Are we just sitting on our couch saying I would be a millionaire and think it's going to fall
Right.
out of the sky? No, it has to be movement. It has to be action. You have to be implementing these things in your life, moving in those directions, increasing your income, multi levels of streams of income to become that millionaire. Moving now, God may send that one stream of income and increase that to a million, but you're moving, you're working what you have by your faith and by your action.
Yeah, I just have to, say this. On Sunday, I randomly got on here and I didn't really know what I was going to be talking about. But it ended up being that you have to use what is in your hand. So, what are you going to do with what is in your hand? So, even if you have that $1 million dream, that $1 million vision, or you have that conviction within you that now I'm built and I was purposed and fashioned for something more than this, what are you going to do with what is in your hand? Because it's already there. It's now, being bold enough to take that step and silence everything. Because like when we deal with these toxic relationships, when that narcissist has been in your ear over time, over years, over decades, that soundtrack plays so easily in our minds. The first time there's trouble, the first time there's confusion, doubt, that soundtrack starts playing. And so, it's reprogramming and changing what we think and how we feel about that.
I think we have to speak to ourselves. One of the things that I've always been big on is looking in the mirror and encouraging myself. Telling myself how beautiful I am, how smart, how intelligent I am. Just always going back to that place and finding something about myself that I thought that I liked, whether it was something as simple as, oh, my earrings are cute today. Whether it was, I like my hair today, I like my outfit, oh, I like my lipstick today, whatever it was, until that began to become more past the superficial.
Right.
Past the superficial. And I found that the more I did that, I uplifted myself and draw strength from within, and I was able to move past these behavior patterns, these relationships, a different guy, different face, but the same person, in these relationships that were domestic violence. And although the name changed, the face changed, it was the same behavior, it was the same type. And so I had to start looking at me and saying, okay, what are you doing that keeps attracting and allowing yourself to keep falling in this circle with this type of behavior? What is it that you don't like about yourself? Or what is it that someone has said to you that is deep down on the inside of you and is manifesting through these relationships?
That takes courage to ask yourself that, and it's not easy to deal with that. But since you took it there, I want to ask you, do you mind sharing with us
Mm.
what was your upbringing like? Like, how did you grow up? What were your experiences as a little girl?
So I was molested from age 5 to after being molested, I got into domestic violence relationship, where one almost took my life. I've almost took my own life. And then later on, I was later raped. And so that's pretty much, that was pretty much my, from age 5 till age 23, 24, somewhere from that. That was my life. It was cycle after cycle after cycle. Had my son when I was 15, had my daughter when I was 18. Um, but the cycles did not finish. I mean, they continued. So I started experience violence at a very young age, at age 5. And so when I was talking about the voice being silenced, at age 5, I told, and I got in trouble for it. So for me, I always felt alone after that. I felt like no one protected me.
Yeah.
If I'm telling you what happened and I get in trouble, I never told again because something in me switched and it silenced me for a very, very long time. And so when I was going through domestic violence relationships, no one knew unless they were physically there. When I was raped, no one knew because I had a very, the enemy just really played with my mind when it came
Yeah.
to, I felt like nobody had my back, period. I can't talk to nobody because no one's going to help me. That's how I felt. And I understood that that was the trick and the mind games of the enemy. And he wanted me to stay in that vicious cycle. And so I had to draw strength. I listened to my daughter and my son play one day. And I heard my daughter say, I want to be like mom, but mom is hurt. Mom is broken. Mom is bitter, but she didn't see that. She just saw her mom being strong and making everything happen. They needed it. Mom is making it happen. But she didn't see that I was crying myself to sleep at night. She didn't see how I was just angry on the inside. And it came out in other ways.
Yeah.
Very short tempered. You looking at me crazy. What you looking at? Did you say something? It came out in other ways. And then the other way it came out in silence.
Yeah.
Meaning I told no one. I said, and people would, oh, she's so quiet. Because I didn't feel like I had a voice. I felt like it was taken away from me. So I literally just, I mean, it was a process. It was a process, a long process, which I thank God for, because when I started going through my process is when I really discovered who I was, who God made me to be. And I started seeing glimpses and pieces of my purpose through it all. So,
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. It is a lot, and many people can relate to, so many different parts of your story. And then tragically, some can relate to every single part because this is not unique. The only thing that's different is the person experiencing it, but the pain is the same. The devastation is the same, and the lifelong consequences, as well as journey, really is the same. It's just that because we're different bodies, we're different minds, and we're exposed to different things, we're going to process it a little differently each time. But the hurt is, it's all there, and it's a lot. It's a lot to process. And, I can identify with quite a few parts of your story, a lot of it. But when you're attacked as a child, I was 4. When you're attacked as a young child, you're not even given the chance, you're not given the ability to form your own identity. And I think that's where a lot of that confusion comes from, because in my situation, I was always trying to go back to the day before, so I can figure out who was she then so she can show up now. And, it's that living backwards that holds so many of us in a regressive state or a regressive pattern, because it's always trying to go back to the beginning to try to protect that young person. But then also it takes away, or it robs the ability to trust yourself going forward. And so now we have grown women, grown men, whole adult bodies making lifelong decisions, but from that, because your development is arrested. Let's, it's arrested. So essentially you're 4, you're 5, and you're making a lifelong decision about a marriage partner, about who you're going to bed with, and possibly coming up pregnant with, having children with, but you did it from a hurt place. And so there's really not a lot of wisdom in some of these choices, some of the outcomes.
absolutely. So misguided from behavior, from things like you say that was handed down, identity stolen at a very young age. And so when you're trying to piece that all together throughout your life, that is a whirlwind. That is a vicious cycle in itself, especially if you're in a stuck place. If you're in a stuck place mentally, you cannot even fathom how you're going to come out of this. And for me, it was going back to the word of God, drawing strength, reading scriptures, crying myself to sleep, asking God to allow me to see me as how he created me. I didn't want to see me as this mean, this angry, this bitter person, this bitter woman. Who was I? I'm bigger than molestation. I'm bigger than rape. I'm bigger than, almost suicide. Who did
Mhm.
you be? This cannot be my life.
No.
So just digging and praying and searching the scriptures, and like I say, speaking to myself. I remember um during that cycle, I had someone at church. She used to always tell me, well, you got to speak those things that be not as though they were.
Yeah.
But not comprehend that. And that's affirmations, right?
Hmm.
Things that we do not see as our reality right now, but we're hoping for these things to happen. My mind could not even fathom what she was telling me at that time, because my mindset was just not making the connection to what she was saying. It wasn't later on in life that it hit me on what she was telling me to do. And she had no idea what I was experiencing, but she saw something on me. And so she was able to say that to me. And those words pierced me because I'm like, what does that mean? I could not, my mind, I could not wrap up. That's why I understand that if you cannot get this, if you cannot lose the mental weight, how in the world are you supposed to move forward in life if you cannot lose mental weight? If you can,
And I'm sorry, go ahead, finish off what you
if
were saying.
I reprogram your mind and make the mental connection to where God is trying to take you, to lead you into your healing, to lead you into a place of empowerment within self. If you
Right.
make the mental connection to it.
That mental connection is important because, again, this is about snatching your soul. Your soul is where you live, you breathe, you move, you have your being. So
Yeah.
as man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So it all comes from that mental state. You know, how we speak to ourselves and the information that we process is pretty much who we show up as. And so, those initial attacks on a person, and it doesn't matter what phase or what stage in life that they happen, but it's all to derail where you're going and defeat the purpose of your original creation.
I
So, oh, go ahead.
I often have asked and I've posed this question to people, when it says that God knew us before we were in the womb, right? Who were we at that place and that point that He knew us before we got in the womb? Because that purpose came before we got in the womb. That
Okay.
purpose came before we were given birth to. That purpose came before anybody had an opinion. That purpose came before any of the abuse. So, what did He put on the inside of us way back then as a seed? What did He give us? What did He place in us? And sometimes it's a lot, if we take a look at our lives, what we naturally gravitate and calibrate towards is generally what He placed on the inside of us way back then. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know how to find my purpose. I can't move past my pain. Well, what is that thing that gives you so much joy and fulfillment? Because that's what He put in us as a seed, as a part of our purpose. And a lot of times, I don't think people look at it that deep, but I have always just really wanted to know, oh, so this is what you placed on the inside of me, because this came out of nowhere. This came from deep down on the inside of me. And it gives me joy, it gives me happiness, and it leads me to all roads to my purpose.
Right. And I want to thank you so much for breaking it down the way that you did, because really that's what it's about. Before he formed you in your mother's womb, he had to know you intimately, and he already knew the path that you were going to take and the challenges that you were going to face. And so the way I envision it is that before he releases you into life, he spends that time speaking into you and equipping you with everything that you need. So a lot of times we can feel defeated by what is happening around us and to us, but it never affects what's on the deep parts of us. It says we have this treasure in earthen vessels. It's treasure. Treasure never just sits on the surface. It has to be excavated. You've got to go deep down for that. And so a lot of times, we end up coming into that fighter mode, because now it's like, listen, my back is up against the wall and I got to come out punching if I'm going to make it out alive. And so that's when people be like, oh, snap, where did this strength come? It's always been there. And we can't give the devil credit for us being strong for what was already spoken in your life before you ever were thought to your parents.
Yeah.
But before I hush up for a moment, Tanya, whose channel is Just Say No to Narc, says, thank you so much for inviting this beautiful warrior to share her story with us. Deliqua, you are absolutely amazing. Your bravery to share your story will set others free. God bless you. And she sends you a gift.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge Tanya. So we understand where you started, so we can kind of see how you fell into the pattern of relationships that you did. But what was it like in those relationships? Like, was it one person that you had these that's abusive relationship with? Was it was it different people, and did they have similar traits? I know when it comes to narcissists, they all kind of act the same way, and they have a systematic way that they actually um, indoctrinate you into their lives, as well as the way they devalue you in the relationship and finally discard you.
Well, it was several relationships. It was my daughter's father. He's just, I don't know. It seemed like one day he just woke up and he was a different person. His behavior started when he looked up to his older cousin, and so his older cousin had spent a lot of time in prison, and then his mom had just went off to prison, and so he had a lot of anger built up on the inside of him. And so, but his cousin was very abusive to his girlfriend. And so it was like he just started, he showed none of this behavior prior to his cousin getting out of prison. And it was like if his cousin jumped on his girlfriend, she called me and she told me. And it was like the same night or the next day we were fighting. And those fights were bad fights. Like he burnt me with an iron. Um, I fought back. I threw a baseball bat at him. It was bad. We threw knives at each other. It was, when I say it was bad, it was bad. It got to the point where I attempted suicide. I tried to overdose on pills because I suffered from anxiety really bad, and my anxiety came from my childhood and so with that relationship, I just eventually got out. Um, there was no aha moment for me because nothing changed about me. The relationship was just over. And then the next relationship, or not that the next relationship, but the one after that, that one was abusive. Um, very mild mannered, very cool guy. Um, but mentally, uh, he was crazy. I mean, there were times where we can be sitting at the stoplight, and I wrote about this in my book. We were sitting at the stoplight, and I can, your car pull up next to you, and you just turn your head and look, and you turn back. And he's like, "Well, what you looking at them for? You want to get in the car with them?" And I'm like, it's a natural thing. I will go to the grocery store. Oh, you want to literally watch me in the grocery store. He would watch guys. He would see if I'm in eye contact with them, and he was just so miserable within. He he just did a whole bunch of stuff. But we fought like cats and dogs, and he always accused me of things, and I never did anything. But he was always accusing me of cheating on him, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But when they accusing you of something, they over here doing it. They
Yep.
over here, and that's what it was. He was out there doing so much. So, and then he would pick fights with me so that he could leave the house. He would, fight me so he could get mad and could go out there and do whatever he was doing. Um, I eventually started going to church, and although I was brought up in church, as a kid, that's what we did. But I started developing my personal relationship with God, and
Right.
it becoming more meaningful to me. I started going to church and started realizing you're better than this. You deserve much more than this. And I don't know what you're going to do, but this needs to be your last time. You said it was over, and this absolutely needs to be your last time. It was like a switch came on. I didn't know how I was going to really continue to move forward, because you break up, you get back together, you break up, you get back together. We
Mhm.
cycle. And I was just asking God, just please give me a way out, and I promise I will take it. I can't do this anymore. And I finally, when I was sitting in church, I made my decision that this is it for me. I cannot. And when I got out of church that day, he had a note on my car. Can you please come so we can have a conversation? And I ripped the note up. I was like, I cannot do it. Because if you go back, you're going to fall right back into the cycle with him. He's going to tell you he's sorry. He's
Right.
going to go feed you. He's going to do something nice for you. And you're going to be right back in the cycle. And I had to make the decision. And although I made the decision then, nothing really changed about me besides me just going to church and me getting in the word. But then I started increasing my prayer time. I started increasing my worship time. I started increasing my alone time. And I started to get to know who I was. And that's when things started to change. I really started focusing on myself and my children. I wouldn't go nowhere. I wouldn't, if it wasn't church, if it wasn't work, if it wasn't something with my kids, I wasn't going to be a part of it, because I understood that I could not continue to live my life like that. I knew I wanted so much more. And I started understanding how God was revealing certain things to me. And I'm like, girl, you better than this. You better get up. And I literally started just building myself one day at a time. Through exercise was one of the ways, lifting my self esteem up,
Mhm.
um, and just talking to myself a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. The other thing that I did was I didn't give people really the time of day, because my journey was personal. It was very, very personal. And I didn't feel like everybody needed to be a part of my journey.
Right.
And although I did open up and I started talking to my pastors and getting advice from them, they were the only ones that I would go to and talk to about certain things, to help me through certain things. Because not only was I trying to heal from this, I was trying to heal that little 5-year-old girl.
Right.
I was trying, how can I heal her? And so a lot of it came from forgiveness, and I had to forgive myself, because for some reason I was angry with me too for allowing myself to keep making these decisions, to keep being in these patterns of behaviors, to keep continuing to go through these cycles. So I really had to forgive myself. And I found out the first person that I had to forgive was my mom, because she was the person I told at 5. And forgiving myself, and then, okay, who is next? So it was family members, because I was molested by family members.
Yeah.
So I had to forgive them. And so once I began to do that, I started to see things change in my life. And I promise you, the day that I forgave my mom, I felt like, oh, the sky opened up. I felt so light. And I had never, ever felt like that before. I felt like everything just came out of me and I was floating. And I literally just sat in my room and I cried, because I knew God had came into my heart of true forgiveness. Of true forgiveness. I understood in that moment that he really released me, and I released myself in that moment from everything that I had experienced. And I did not look back. I did not look back. I just pressed forward. And some of those very same things, I make sure I'm very accountable to myself. my actions, my words. At the end of the day, could I have said that differently? Was that a little too brass?
Hmm.
I'm 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 very big on self accountability. I'm very big on continuing self growth. What from this should I have learned? Because I don't want to repeat this again tomorrow or down 2 weeks from now. What can I have learned from this situation? And I did this stuff at 25 and I'm 43 now and I still do it today. And I think that has helped me sustain and be able to continue to walk in my healing because it's easy to go back.
It is.
It's very easy to go back. It's very, very easy to go back to that broken place.
It is easy to go back to the broken place, but it's amazing how, when God steps in, all it takes is for his presence to be ushered in and everything changes. And so I know, like, I've been looking at the comments and seeing how so many people are relating with the story on how your healing process looks. But one thing I think that is really common for a lot of people is that we feel responsible for some of the things that we experience. Even the little girl, I used to feel responsible for being molested, but like you're a baby, how could you couldn't consent, you didn't know what was happening, so how are you responsible for this? But it's part of the weight and the shame of these abusive situations that we carry and shape the way we view ourselves. And so when you mention forgiving yourself, I think we really are the first person that we need to forgive, because then the forgiveness that springs from that for other people can be from a place of authenticity and not something that we're just trying to duplicate or manufacture because we're taught to be forgiving people. Because then we're just, it's not really real. It has to stem from you. You can't pour from an empty vessel. And so you have to be soaked in that spring of forgiveness before you can forgive other people. But it's hard.
It is.
Getting to that point of forgiving yourself is hard. How did you get there?
Oh my God. Um, just realizing that there was something in me that was greater than my current situation and understanding that there was something holding me back and reflecting, what is it? Why am I still holding on to this little girl so much? Did I fail her? And understanding that I needed to, in that moment, release, forgive me, because in your mind, you're thinking, I keep allowing myself to go through this. Okay, at 5 years old, 10, okay, that's what it is. But when you get at an age of real accountability,
Hmm.
16, 17, 18, 19, when you know better, when you were five, that happened. You didn't make the decision, but you're making the decision to keep dating the same dude with a different name and different face.
Hmm. Yep.
Why do you keep making this decision? And I understood that a lot of it had to do with my daddy not being in my life the way that I needed him to be. And so I had no real male relationship to look at to understand how I'm to be treated. Because I think the first relationship as females we should have is with our dad.
Right.
He paves the way of what we desire, right? But when I look at my dad was what I was dating.
It's important that for fathers, right, fathers of daughters, to be present. I mean, I'm not saying the sons don't need it, they very much do need it. But the dad sets a bar as far as what his daughter is to expect in men, not just with how he treats her, but it's also important how he treats her mother. Now, I know people get together and they break up, but how do you talk about her mom? Because a lot of times you find that every time they want to refer to the mom, she's a B, she's this or she's that. And everything that's coming from or that the child is hearing their dad say about the mom is purely toxic. And so doesn't that kid then sit back and say, hold up, if that's mom and I came from her, what am I? And those are those things that it's that subconscious programming that sometimes takes place, and it may not be until years down the line when that child is actually walking in the fullness of themselves, meaning that they've had their own awakening and are alert and aware of who they are and what's going on and why they make the choices that they make, that they're able to say, oh yeah, this is, you talked about my mom. Or even how we women can sometimes talk about the men that we had babies with, and your dad is no good for this, no good for that's why I'm such a big advocate about don't talk about your child's or don't talk about your co-parent like that. And even if it's just somebody you're dating or talking to, don't talk down on them, because first, that's your choice to be with this person, and the kids don't need to see that toxic or those unhealthy patterns form, because we want them to be able to see themselves in how we conduct ourselves as an integrated adult, somebody who is fully in tune with our emotions and our responses and our behaviors.
I agree. 100%. It's easy. Is I think it's easy because when it's just passed down,
Yeah.
it's passed down to you, and you become a parent, you kind of sometimes fall into that same mode of what that learned behavior that we saw or what we know. The words that we speak is a lot of times is mimicking what we have heard.
Right.
I realized that my expectation level was very, very, I'm not going to even say low. It was just non existent. And that came from the relationship with my dad and understanding that I would get excited about him saying, I'm going to come get you, I'm going to come get you, and he shows up. So I didn't really expect much from people because I felt like if I give you too much, you're going to break my heart. So a lot of things you do, I'm protected, I'm guarded because I really didn't expect much out of you from the get go. But understanding now that that robbed me of my decision and my choices, of me allowing myself to expect greater, to want greater. So, but because I didn't, then these are the behavior patterns that I felt into. But I understood that. I understand it now. I didn't understand that back then. But I literally had to trace that back to my childhood. Why don't you expect much from people? Why are you staying in this situation? Why don't you get excited? Why aren't you getting your hopes up? But it was a coping mechanism.
That coping mechanism shows up in so many ways.
So
You know, oh wow, it shows up in so many ways, and it's not until you actually realize that this is what it is. This is why I do this. This is why the bar is set so low in my life. It's because of these things, but it really takes taking an introspective look at yourself. In our society and culture, it's so easy to get caught up in what's going on in the next person's life. And, oh, did you see what so and so did on the gram and that type of thing? It's so easy to get caught up in stuff like that, that we continue to abandon ourselves because we're so all up in other people's business that we forget that there's importance in us minding our own business and tending to our own needs.
as an adult, I like we have to take accountability for ourselves. We can't allow the past to continue to rob us of where we're going and who God designed us to be. At some point, we just have to say, you know what? Enough is enough. And what do I need to do within myself to change this? And stop looking at the situations and the circumstances. They happened. They did. Many things happened to me. Okay. Am I going to stay stuck in what happened to me? Or am I going to dig in my soil where my feet is grounded and rooted in
Mhm.
God, where I am planted, and I understand that I may bend, but I'm not going to break. And
All right.
I know my position of power is on my face, is through my meditation, is through my prayer, is where I'm drawing strength to make the decision to say, no, I'm not staying in this place. And I'm going to move forward. So I think it goes back to the foundation of yourself or what you're building. And if we don't have a solid foundation, how can we move forward in our healing? How can we leave these relationships that are toxic, whether they're domestic violence, whether they're friendships, family members? How can we leave these relationships if our foundation, our core, isn't set? We don't have nothing. A lot of times, a lot of people don't have anything to stand on because they haven't looking at their foundation. They haven't taken time in their foundation to pave it and to smooth it out and to fill it up with whatever they're going to fill it up with. Their determination, their strength, their courage, their love, their self-worth. They're not taking time to, people, and you put it up when I said, I can't remember my exact words about just wanting to skip the journey of self-growth and get right to the stage where I've grown, because
Mhm.
it is an eye-opener, because you realize a lot of things you thought about yourself are not true.
Yep.
And then it's a lot of things that you just need to unlearn, period. Because this stuff does not serve who you are and where you're going. So you need to unlearn a lot of this stuff. And looking at yourself sometimes, it's not going to always be a pretty picture. If you're looking deep at yourself, it's not going to always be pretty. And I think a lot of times people get scared of what they're going to discover about themselves. They're going to realize that some of this stuff is not true about me. I don't have it together like I thought I did. And that in itself is just a scary journey and a scary process for a lot of people. But I think if we don't take accountability for ourselves, to self-reflect and to dig down and look at ourselves, we will stay in a stage of not being healed, not being able to move forward, and to pull ourselves up from these toxic behaviors of ourselves and these toxic behaviors that we accept from other people.
That is true. You mentioned foundations, and it immediately took me to the scripture. And I don't know, I can't quote the verse, but I know it says, like, if the foundations be ruined, what shall the righteous do? We've got to have a steady foundation. And I think our foundation, if we're going to be honest, lies in the fact that before he formed us in our mother's womb, he knew us. He had already deposited something in us. And now it's up to us to do the work to excavate that thing. But now you've told us where you started, you told us where you were, but now we see you today, and we see your hair is all done, your skin is glowing,
Okay.
you're booked, you're busy, you're doing your thing.
Yes.
How did you then take that pain and make it work to your benefit? How did you take what was in your hand and bring it forward?
I think I just felt like I just don't have a choice. I feel like I owe it to myself. But not only to myself, I understand that there's so many other women, older than me, younger than me, that are experiencing or have experienced this. They're stuck. And I just felt like God did so much for me. How can I just keep that boggled on the inside? I feel like my life is not my own. I really feel like literally my life is not my own. My journey, I tell people all the time, they were like, well, can't you just walk straight? No, God ain't tell me to go straight. He told me to go down. I got to circle back. I got to do all of this stuff. My life is not that easy, straight path. That's not the path he has given me.
Right.
And so I think it is just me feeling like and knowing that my life is not my own. It is about his purpose on my life. Trust me, there's a lot of stuff that I do. If I had it my way, I would be sitting in the corner quiet. But
Right.
I understand that God said, no, I'm going to use your voice. I'm going to help you heal, rebuild, and empower other people, men included.
Right.
You so I understand that, and I don't take it lightly. And I feel like every day that I get up is my due diligence. However, I'm doing it, whether it's through fitness, whether it's through interviews, conversations with random people. However, and there are moments where I just find myself talking to a complete stranger, and these moments when you be like, why am I telling this person this? But it's something that they needed to hear in that moment, to understand that they are not alone. Somebody else has been in that same place, that same spot, and they have come out. I find myself in a lot of those conversations a lot of days, a lot of days. But I just feel like it's all or nothing when it comes to my purpose, and I don't have a choice. I have no say in the matter.
I understand. And I thank you, for just being you and sharing all of these things about yourself with us today. It serves as a reminder that, God loves us, because even in the midst of some of the things that we're facing, and so many people are at different stages of the recovery process, some haven't even taken the first step yet, but He sent such a beautiful gift in you to remind us that I'm still here. And, there are so many nuggets that you've shared with us that we can all glean from as we continue to journey forward. So I thank you for that. Tanya Forbes sent you a little gift and to show you her appreciation for you being here with us tonight. Um, and we really do appreciate you being part of the conversation, part of the discussion with our community. So we know now you're using your voice to inspire others. But like, tell us a little bit about yourself now. Like, I want to know, where do we find you on social media? What is it that you do? I know somewhere earlier on in the comments, somebody talked about wanting to, how one of her goals was to have a fit lifestyle. And I don't know if she's aware, but Deliqua has a channel that she has, and she even has Zoom classes where she leads fitness. She has a YouTube channel, and she does this to help people with their recovery. I've shared that if it wasn't for, sets of 45s, I would never have began to shed off some of the weight that I've carried in my heart from years and years of, this type of abuse. And so Elizabeth says to you, thank you for being here. Thank you for a great show tonight. And she sent you a gift too. So community really appreciates you for taking time to join us, but share with us how, we can contact you. What is this book that you have? How do people get involved with your fitness, and how, if they needed you for, to talk to share with, to be, uplifted with, how do we do this?
Okay. So my book is called Through the Pain I Rise, Let's Talk. And it is a more in-depth journey of my story, me breaking down every single thing that happened to me and going through my healing and what that looked like, the different stages of forgiveness, my compassion level, just different things. My book can be found on Amazon for Kindle version, and then also on my website, www.deliqua, Deliqua, Isom, Isom. It's author, I'm sorry, www.author.deliquaisom.com. On Facebook, is Deliqua Isom. I do have a business page on Facebook, which is Flawless Fitness Spa on Facebook. My YouTube is Flawless Fitness Spa. IG, it is at flawless underscore fitness 38. And my website for my fitness, my live Zoom classes is www.flawlessfitness.biz. And that way you can go on there, you can sign up for the class. They're live classes. If you can't attend, I do send the classes. So if a person that is a private class. It's $100 a month, and you get to take every class, as many classes as you want. If you're unable to attend, like today, I do send out the link so you can have it and you can follow along. And say if you couldn't do it earlier today, you want to do it now, you'll be able to have the link, click on it, and I'll pop up on your screen, your laptop, wherever you are. And all the workouts are done in the comfort of your living room. Um, we barely use weights. Sometimes we do, but they're light weights, nothing more than 5 to 10 pounds. The women that are trying to build a little bit more muscle, they may go, 15, 20 pounds, for those that are trying to build. But those that are trying to lose weight, I keep their weight very low, 5 to 10 pounds or no weight at all. But those are like my platforms. On my author website, I do have my coaching, like I call it wellness empowerment coaching, where I kind of do sit with people, meet with them, and we talk about their life. And I help them figure out some things, put some things in perspective. And they have homework to complete for our next section. And then we sit down and we figure out, okay, what's the next game plan, for their life. So that can all be found on my author website, authordeliquaisom.com.
Thank you so very much for being here with us tonight. Everybody who showed up today, we appreciate you and we do not take your time for granted. It's through you showing up and hearing these stories and getting your healing and doing the same work with other people that we all continue to do the work of exposing this type of abuse, where we begin to speak up and say, listen, you raggedy dusty narcissist, it's over for you swamp creatures, because you're exposed. And that is how the enemy is put to shame, and that is how we silence the mouth of the enemy. So I want to thank you all so very much for being here with us today. Thank you so much, Tanya, for putting the information in the comments and where to find her. You are the bomb. We appreciate you all so much. Thank you for being our special guest tonight. It's really been a pleasure chatting with you as well as getting to know you. Everybody, I will be back here next Tuesday, and we're going to be chopping it up, talking about the raggedy, dusty narcissist and whatever else we have to discuss. I'm looking forward to having some time with you next Tuesday. But Tanya is doing North of the Fray tomorrow night, so join her on her channel and call in and let's keep the conversation going so that we can all heal. I appreciate your time. God bless you all and have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.